I had the great pleasure, the great privilege, the great honour of meeting Nelson Mandela when he visited Sydney back in 1990, shortly after being released from jail in South Africa. I recall many things about that visit. I recall Nelson Mandela's very firm handshake, his beautiful smile, but I deeply, fondly remember the optimism, the hope springing from his speeches. Let's not forget this was a man who had just spent decades in that prison, who had lived life with the sheer indignities that it involved in apartheid South Africa, speaking with great hope for the future of his country. He, of course, went on to become South Africa's president, but at the time, his country still faced so many challenges. But the hope is something I remember coming from his speeches, from all of those comments he made on that visit.
As United Nations marks its 75th anniversary in this fragile time, we reflect on the life and work of Nelson Mandela, who embodied the highest values of the United Nations and took action and inspired change. Despite many years as a prisoner of conscience, Mandela retained his dignity and commitment to his ideals.
Nelson Mandela told us, "I am fundamentally an optimist. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed to the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lays defeat and death."
Poem. From William Ernest Henley.
Yeah. That poem was his favorite poem. And as he explains to Pinar, when he lost courage, when he felt like just giving up, just lie down and not get up again, he would recite it. And it would give him what he needed to keep going.
Can you recite it? If you can't, there are some words.
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I learned it when I was in school.
Yeah. Did you really?
Yeah. I think whatever God there may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of fate, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the shadow of the shade. Yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me, unafraid. God, matters not how straight the gate, how punishment charged the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
I was a refugee asylum seeker who migrated to Australia at the age of 16. And so maybe perhaps I have a little bit of experience in, some of my friends who came with me and myself. And I guess what I could say to the question of what makes me optimistic is that from my experience, I've just learned that, it's one thing to be very practical. It's another thing to be very realistic. And it's another thing to be very positive and optimistic, because if I was to be just practical and maybe negative, I may still have been left in my home country of Zambia, where everyone told me I wouldn't amount to much. And, I was raised in a family where we didn't have a lot of resources. And so if I use that as a decision to be either realistic and say, well, if nobody else around me has changed, and then maybe nothing's going to be good that's going to happen for me as well, chances I wouldn't be here living in Bali as a executive business coach running 6 companies in 5 continents. The thing that got me there, my friends, is optimism. Lucky for me, had friends and had mentors that really believed in me a little bit more, and then basically told me I could do more, a little by little every day. And so for me, I really think that optimism really matters. And that's one of the biggest secret ingredients I've had that's led to my success.
My values as a young person were centered around kindness, respect, and hard work, with realistic optimism to achieve my goals.
I have great optimism for the future of this country. This pandemic will end, but it's going to take a lot of hope and a lot of optimism to get us through to the other side. And this is where you all come in. All the best.
I'm optimistic because optimism and hope, I use those interchangeably, is my state of mind. not a state of the world.
What makes you optimistic? And truthfully, it is people like you who make me optimistic. People who believe in themselves. People who believe in the value of human rights. People who believe in Mandela's teachings. That is what makes me optimistic. It is you.
See, optimism isn't like, oh, everything is just great, because we know everything isn't just great. There's lots of challenges in the world. There's lots of struggles in the world. There's injustice in the world. An optimist sees that and knows that and says, what can I do to make it better?
And I'd like to still think after 42 years of work, for me, it's always about glass half full. It's always about seeing the best in people, the best in a situation. And I think if that's the approach we take to life, we'll be a long way ahead of where those that don't adopt that similar approach.
Hi, this is my sister Ananda, my dad Michael, and I'm Camilla. And what makes you optimistic?
I find the fact that there are millions of people out there who are old, young, and in the middle, who are ready to take up roles of leadership and make an impact on our world. I find that really, really inspiring.
And somewhat similarly, but with specific focus on your generation, the next generation, I feel really optimistic because I feel that the next generation is not waiting anymore. Is not thinking that they need to learn and grow more before they actually start to make a voice, to take action for themselves. You can see that in the climate marches around the world. And that makes me optimistic. I don't think we have the time to wait for your generation to come around and sort of think that maybe you need to take action. This is the time to take action now. And I see lots of young leaders coming up and making that difference. So that makes me really optimistic.
What makes me so optimistic? You know what makes me optimistic? Young people like you that are eager to make a difference, that are eager to jump in and solve the problems, whether it be pandemic, whether it be racial inequality, maybe social injustice. Because you know, the energy and the optimism of youth, you can't replicate that. There's no substitute for enthusiasm. So thank you for your willingness to jump in and get involved.
What makes me optimistic is my sense of faith, my practice of faith, and really always remembering that we're not alone, that God is with us in all that we do, and we can find God's presence in the people around us if we're willing to be attentive to everything going around us.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Capp, Head of La Trobe Shepparton Campus, and we're delighted to be supporting the 3rd Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit. Congratulations to everyone involved in this event. What gives me cause for optimism is seeing the wonderful work that's happening in our Shepparton community with so many people involved in initiatives to make sure that we're all staying safe and well and connected, that people who need additional support are receiving it, and that in general no one is falling through the cracks during a very difficult and challenging time for all of us. I'm thinking of things like primary school children writing letters to some of our aged care residents who can't receive visitors and are at risk of being quite isolated. I'm thinking of wonderful community organisations like Foodlink, which connects caterers who need work with families who need help to provide meals, and so many other examples of community members taking extraordinary lengths to ensure that our collective health and well-being is as good as it can be. And I find that really inspiring, and it gives me great cause for optimism and hope in the future.
What makes me optimistic? A very good question. I like to promote creative and innovative thinking, to think outside the square, to ask what is needed to find solutions rather than what's wrong. I like to view failure or mistakes as an opportunity to learn and make progress. Trial and error life experiments.
What makes me optimistic is my positive attitude towards life. I always see the world with eyes full of joy and love. And I truly believe in the power of human connection.
Love makes me optimistic. Love and community, whether it is a connection with the natural world, with our families and our local community, whether it is connection out in the world beyond.
What makes you optimistic?
One of my strong grounds for optimism is our work at Future Voices to help younger people have a tolerant, self-building attitudes and values of positive survival. For example, live and let live. It makes the world better for all. It helps people understand the common values of humanity, making life better for minorities and the majority alike. This is the post-COVID-19 pandemic and beyond optimism message to all. Allow me to quote Mandela's optimistic leadership knowledge. Quote, "What accounts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we make to the lives of the others that will determine the significance of the life we lead."
What makes you an optimistic?
Well, over the past sort of seeing the change, I guess, in the past 10 years, I've seen a massive shift towards multiculturalism, gender equality, as well as workplace fairness.
What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up?
We all have this ability to respond with love, and so prayer and meditation are my practices. It always brings me back to a very similar theme, and that is unconditional love dissolves, unconditional love nurtures courage, all of these things. I have a choice, and those things help to really nurture optimism and this sense of hope and, owning my power.
One of the things that Tyson Yunkaporta has provoked us, Indigenous, incredible mind and heart writer and activist, really, an educator, has provoked us here at the Centre for Optimism to look at Optimism 2.0, beyond words. What is optimism beyond words? And
optimism is in my DNA, which in a way, as a First Nations person, maybe sounds a little strange, in terms of, as I said, we have a lot perhaps not to be optimistic about, but then we walk in the steps of our ancestors, and so we take all of those lessons and all those pathways, and we are still moving forward, so we have to be optimistic, and so that's a pretty powerful, that's a pretty powerful thing. I think I've always had that, feeling within. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think being in Victoria, you're all aware of our lockdown here. I think what makes me optimistic is that by and large, people have done the right thing and we're pulling together as a community, which is very important. And I think going forward, we'll pull it together and we'll manage, and our economy will somehow right itself. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom about that, but I'm optimistic that everyone works hard, we'll pull through.
Myself as a musician, I constantly tell myself when I go to study, when I go for many hours to study, I tell myself that that I had to be creative in my own process, because that keeps me inspired too. And if I'm inspired, I'm very happy, and that makes me optimistic at the end, no? So for me, the connection that I make is gratitude.
Hope, for me, is the biggest ingredient for optimism.
There's a lot of momentum building in the renewable energy space that can change our world, and also resource recovery. So I'm really optimistic about the conversations that are going on around the world in that space.
I spend a lot of time thinking about things at a macro level, particularly around climate and the environment, et cetera. But thinking at a micro level, which obviously informs the macro level, the thing that's making me optimistic is our staff and our people at Greening Australia. There's 40 of them that have been, basically in place or in lockdown for 6 months now, and they're the way that they're contributing to each other and supporting each other and still making a contribution to the community is blowing me away. It's a real privilege to actually serve them. So very optimistic about our people and what they're doing for the planet and our community.
I'm optimistic for this region because we have a beautifully diverse community. If we cultivate respect and share our stories and time, there is so much that can be accomplished.
Absolutely everything makes me optimistic, Victor. I think I'm just a bundle of optimism. But today, it's just knowing that the days are longer, that spring's here, that the flowers and blossom are coming out. I'm really optimistic that tomorrow's a minute and a half, 2 minutes longer. I love it.
Perfect. My mom is a very happy person. I think it's our DNA is like that. The positiveness in all the things come to my family. It's our DNA. You're always smiling. It's like...
Optimism is the evidence for dreams not yet realised.
Good question. I also have 3 young children as well. So, family and the future for my family and my children and their generations to come is what I certainly believe. The work that I do today and the impact and the legacy that leaves for our future generation is what I believe in, optimism and innovation that goes with that as well.
People who make positive change, like Anna and Guy and Kelly, they're making a great contribution to society, and that's uplifting people, and that's what we need in Australia today. But we've always had it. It's just a matter of groups like this getting together more and more and making that change and instilling it in the younger generations.
And we know from 6,000 years of recorded history anyway that opportunity always follows difficulty. That recession then is followed by progression, and populist upheaval is usually followed by periods of stability. Back in the Dark Ages and the Black Death in Europe, we saw the flourishing of art and science and literature and education in the period of the Renaissance. That's how history tends to go up and down as it has for 6,000 years.
The collective wisdom and the collective insights that doing activities like this and doing the festival really have, reinvigorated me. I'm an extrovert, and so I need to be with people and I need to exchange ideas. So that optimism that, yes, like spring, we're emerging out of something. And I think, we're coming back into our humanity. And for me, it's looking about how humanity shapes technology. So, it's great to be able to be with like-minded people and keep pursuing these, a society we want.
That is one of the great habits of the optimist. When I asked Bill George, the author of True North, that great business book, I asked him what makes him optimistic. It was exactly the same as you. He said, being surrounded by positive people, what a blessing. And that's the guru of leadership.
You always make me optimistic, Victor. But
I want to know something else.
Absolutely. But look, I think all of the experiences I've had with various people through COVID and the resilience of people that are around, everyone's finding it tough and finding different experiences. But by and large, I think the resilience and the positivity and the way that people have really reached out to help people in this difficult time rather than sort of cocoon by and large, I think has been really, really enlightening and certainly generating a lot of optimism. So that's certainly for me at the moment, and being president of a soccer club. And
look, it's just the ability to follow passion for me. And I think we all, have passions, but often we invest in activities or people or things that aren't necessarily aligned with those passions. And for me, it comes down to, absolutely being able to, really express that passion authentically.
Optimism is probably one of the things that keeps people going.
And what makes me optimistic, there's been a lot of sort of reference to kind of collaboration and sort of humanity, but and whilst I also agree on all of what was said there, I also think technology makes me very optimistic because it empowers us to tackle global problems on a global scale, and because of course technology operates at that level, it gives us an incredible sort of outreach and an ability to really change the world on that sort of on that scale. So,
yeah, well, I'm naturally an optimistic person anyway, so that's so just generally optimistic about life.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah, I think it's a complex question. I think where society generally, particularly online, everyone's kind of geared towards pessimism. And I think if this was a forum of complaining about what was wrong with everything, you know, we might see some different numbers. I think it's really refreshing to see a group of people talking about the positive side. And I think you have to have a dose of questions. You know, it can't all be sunshine and roses, but I think people who... Costa Georgiadis, the gardening guy, he epitomises that for me, optimism. He has a glow about him and a magnetism. And I think if we can tap into that side of ourselves more through our businesses, through our relationships, through that empathy, and he has amazing empathy. I met him when he was in Albury, and it was just this old soul with a warm glow and on the front foot in a positive way. I thought, you know, everyone could learn from a guy like this. I think he encapsulates optimism. That person like Costa, I don't know if some of you may not know Costa, but he's the guy with the massive beard, the black hair. Is a real character. But yeah, I think empathy, I think having the capacity to connect with others from their point of view and reflect their needs, I think that's a big part of it for me.
Next question. What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up? I mean, look, there are so many issues, right? Environmental issues, political issues, social issues. But to me, the biggest issue is a lack of kindness in our political system, is our lack of kindness to each other. You turn on the news and you see people screaming at each other, and you see politicians behaving like children. And the truth is that you are the future. And if you can go out into the world and create change with an empathetic heart, the world will sit up and listen.
Clearly, the major issue now needing young leaders to stand up is the COVID-19 emergency. We need our young leaders to stand up, have a voice, and help young people in our state understand that this virus is real, it is deadly, and they are not immune. Young people listen to their friends, they listen to their peers, so we need our young leaders to be strong and have their say. Another is our changing climate. Now this year, Greater Shepparton City Council declared a climate emergency and adopted a 2030 zero carbon emission target. Our climate is changing, and it is the future of our young people which will be most affected. This movement really has already been led by the younger generation, which has been amazing to see. In Greater Shepparton, we have a project called the Shepparton Statement, which calls on our younger community members to have their say on climate change. We need our young leaders to contribute to push for change in this space. You will be heard, you will be supported, and with everyone's support, you will shape the future.
So what are the biggest issues that maybe, needing young people to step up? To be honest, it's a very hard question. I think young people now, unlike when I was growing up, have a lot more distractions, a lot more options in life. And I think maybe counter to what other people might advise, I've come across some research that actually works in my business, where we found that, you know, if you, for example, have a tennis ball and throw it to a young person, they can probably focus on one thing and catch it, right? So imagine the tennis ball is a metaphor for opportunities. Now, let's just say now I give you 10 tennis balls and I say, hey, you want all 10? And you're like, sure, I would love to make more money. I would love to have more friends. I would love to have more jobs. I would love to have more businesses. And then I throw all 10 at the same time at you. What's going to happen? You're probably not going to catch any ball. And this is a sad reality, I think, for one of the biggest issues I find in the young people today, is that because of our social media, Facebook, smartphones, computers, access to internet, we have so much opportunity and ideas bombarding us at the same time. And I think what leaders need to step up into is maybe getting some guidance around how to focus on one thing. That's right. It's very, very hard to do. And I think it's a good thing. I'm a big believer in having many, many passions. But the sooner you can get to focusing on what you want to do in your life, and how you want to make money in your life, and then what skills you think you might need to be successful in that particular craft area, business, position, job, call it what you want, and then just try and focus on that one thing. I think that's going to help a lot. So hopefully we can share more on that. The third is how does my leadership actually help me when I was young set me up in today? Well, for me, I think what was my biggest saving grace, my friends, is one of the biggest things I think young leaders need is a sense of curiosity. That's being able to be excited about anything that is different to you. So it might be, you know, if you're from African background like me, I was super curious about how Aboriginals lived. I was curious about how the Western world worked. So I wanted to travel to those places and go experience it for myself. I was also curious about people who maybe had different situations to me. You know, I grew up as a farm boy in Zambia, Africa, and yet I met other people who were city people. You know, they did different things. Or I might have watched a movie and was inspired by someone who just did something that was just so foreign out of my world, but I was very, very curious. So I think one of the biggest things young people can do as a person is step back and get very curious about things that are different. Don't judge them too quickly. And if you're young, try and do more new things and just have a little bit of courage to understand that you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but it's in those mistakes that you actually learn. So I really hope some of you guys can get something out of that. And the last part is, what would young people need to study, I think, to do what I do? I guess for me, it's a funny one. One of the biggest lessons I think I have that have helped me in my success today in business, at least in leadership, coaching that at the moment, is just telling people to, again, study, you know, biographies of the great people, you know, get interested in things like social skills, get interested in negotiation skills, get interested in understanding your own personality and what makes you tick, what are your strengths and weaknesses, get interested in conflict resolution. How do you overcome a negative situation? Maybe you get into an argument with a friend or a teacher or a leader or a parent. How can you use the right tools to influence that situation so it doesn't become very negative for you? And I think the last one is, I think as a young person, I was always interested in reading. And I don't know if we can count that as study, but I think it's one thing to go to school and get a good education. And I'm a big believer in that. But, you know, I have a son. I think if I were to give him advice, I would rather, if I had everything taken away, including his school, what is the one thing I'd want him to study? I would want him to study the ability to learn. I really want him to know how to learn. So what I mean by that is, it's one thing to go get a curriculum and the teacher gives you mathematics and you have to read the book and repeat what he said. It's another thing for you to go study how the brain works in terms of how you retain information. It's another thing in speed reading, maybe. It's another thing in how to have comprehension skills, how to translate that information so you can communicate it to your friends and others. These other parts is what I feel education is all about, which is to induce from within gifts, being able for you to learn how to study any field, anytime, and be able to command confidence because you actually understand things at the root issue. So this is beyond schooling, my friends, or at least formal education. I've learned this, unfortunately, later on in my life, about the ability to be able to learn. And what that did for me is it allowed me then to get curious, if you remember that, to go back into being able to learn anything about any topic, and that served me so well in business, because no matter whether there's a trend in business, technology, or programming, I know how to learn. I follow a system of how to do that. If I want to learn about a new language, I know how to learn and have a system to follow to do that. So I really hope that inspires you guys to get curious about that. And if you have any questions for me about anything, I'll be hopefully at the summit able to introduce a few people. But later on, I'd love to connect with you guys on chats if we have the opportunity, or on social media afterwards. So I wish you the very, very best on the summit as well. And really wanted to congratulate everyone and encourage you guys to really sign up and join this event, because you'll be able to meet with people who can really help you grow and deal with some of the situations or difficult times that we're in, but how to basically turn the lemon into lemonade, so that you can seize that opportunity and look back maybe 5 years from now when the pandemic is gone and say, I'm so glad I attended this event because I got the skills I needed to be.
What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up in? Well, I think it's inclusion. I think we need young leaders like you to be loving, to be caring, and to be inclusive, to make sure that no one's left out. You know, whether you're rich or you're poor, you're black or you're white, or whatever color you are, let's make sure that we all remember this, that we're all brothers and sisters, that we're all human, that we all deserve a little bit of happiness in life. And you know,
we too in Australia have our own share of challenges at the moment, care of the pandemic. They can't be compared in any way with spending decades in jail, but they are deep and everlasting challenges nonetheless. And my advice to young Australians is to simply get involved. The rebuilding of our society, of our economy, of our way of life is not going to take months or years, it's going to take several years. Get involved, raise your voice, play your part, be it at a local, a community level, a state level, a national level. Youthful enthusiasm, youthful vigour is something that this country is going to need in large numbers over the course of the next couple of years, if not the next decades. I have great optimism for the future of this country. This pandemic will end, but it's going to take a lot of hope and a lot of optimism to get us through to the other side. And this is where you all come in. All the best.
What are the big issues that need young leaders to step up?
There are many issues around the world at the moment. Not the least of them, of course, is the current crisis of COVID. But I would think that in amongst all the issues, including geopolitics and environment and human rights issues right around the world, is the two most prominent issues that we need to deal with now is bring back balance into our leadership. So there's more feminine wisdom that is driving our decisions collectively and individually, and deal with the climate, the very rapid climate change that we're facing. So I tend to say that if you want to take action in places that are really relevant to our future, it's either in raising the feminine or lowering temperature. I would say these are the prime ones.
The big issues that young leaders need to step up to today, we're doing a really good job these days of using our voices. But I think we really need to pause and consider whether we can hear each other. And so right now, for all of us globally, I think the skill of listening is one that we also need to practice attentively and try and break down the things that separate us and look for those things that unite us and remind us of our common humanity.
What are the big issues that young leaders need to step up?
Issues include sustainability, achieving sustainable development goals, the environment, equity and fairness, global share of the resources, universal peace for, and indeed learning how to learn from own environment and through each individual's cognitive and metacognitive, affective and motivational learning models.
In our research, and this is over 20 years of research in leadership, the greatest leaders that I have ever known assumed positive intent about the people around them. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to assume that you're trying to do a good job, and in trying to do a good job, you might make mistakes, and that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. We can fix the mistake. You are not the problem. You have a problem. So collectively, let's get together and solve that problem. Let's not assume negative intent. In other words, because, oh, you're from such a place, then you must not be a good person. Let's assume that everybody is a good person until proven wrong. Let's assume positive intent about each other.
Hi, my name is Victoria, and I am school captain from St. George's Road Primary School. I am really excited for this Nelson Mandela Summit because it builds up networks, leadership, and confidence.
Victoria, what makes you optimistic?
I just start looking at the down things of life, and I get a lot of support from my family members, my friends, and my teachers and my mentors.
Why should people come to this summit?
Because you're going to experience a whole lot of different things, and it'll be a great way to become more optimistic.
What would you like to tell everyone?
What makes you optimistic? By coming to this summit, it will be a great way for you to start being more optimistic.
I'm Jacob Gold. I live in Colorado in the United States, and I go to Regis Jesuit High School.
And Jacob, tell me what you're going to be doing.
I'm going to be attending the Nelson Mandela Leadership Summit this year.
And why do you think it's necessary for youth to be involved in that summit?
I think that it promotes leadership and taking action on issues that you believe need action taken. I believe that leadership is important in order to foster a better world in the future. As well as the fact that we're going to be the next generation, and we're going to need to have those skills of being able to take action and at least talk to the people who are in charge of taking that action.
And Jacob, do you have any concerns about the environment and the climate you want to share?
I do. I think we've waited a long time to take action on the climate crisis that we're slowly digging ourselves into. And because of that inaction, we could be facing some very serious consequences in the future if action isn't taken.
And Jacob, what do you propose to be a positive solution in that regard? What do you think should happen?
I think the main thing is talking to your representatives in government, is, convincing them that this is an issue that needs to be focused on more and more every day, and that we need to fix the problem before it gets worse.
And Jacob, tell me what makes you optimistic about considering having a voice in the future.
I think my generation has been very outspoken on issues where they need to be, on issues that threaten them, and I think that because of that, speaking out, I think we'll be a lot better off in the future.
At the moment, life is very different to what we are used to. The current global pandemic has radically changed the world around us. Particularly as a young person, thinking about the future can be daunting. However, we need to remember that decisions made by today's leaders will have a huge impact on how we live the rest of our lives. That is why it is vital that we, as young people, engage in these decisions with optimism and strength. On Tuesday the 15th of September, the third Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit will take place. The theme of this year's summit is young people leading with optimism through the pandemic and beyond. We are encouraging young people to come together and talk with leaders from the fields of science, commerce, business, education, and diplomacy. The exceptional array of guest speakers include Dr. Amanda Caples, Victoria's lead scientist, Michael Klein, the US Consul General to Melbourne, Andrew Compston, the State Director of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Karen Sobels, the President at the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Ken Murray, Educator and Campus Principal at the Wanganui campus of the Greater Shepparton Secondary College, Margaret Hepworth from the Gandhi Experiment, and Victor Patton, the Chief Optimism Officer from the Centre for Optimism. We're inviting you to learn from their experiences, hear what they have to say on the topic of leadership and optimism, and to offer your own insights as a young leader. As young people, we can utilise our passion and optimism to help pave the path forward. We are the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and activists. And through the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit, we have the opportunity to actively participate in these discussions. Have your voice heard and sign up today.
Hi everyone, Ken Murray, Wanganui Campus Principal of the Greater Shepparton Secondary College. I think if I was to create a better world, I'd want 3 key ingredients. It'd be youth, leadership and optimism. Because I think when you bring those together, it does create something pretty special. I'm enjoying a rare opportunity to be in the outdoors today in the sunshine without a mask, and some of those simple pleasures that we've not become accustomed to lately. I look forward to those returning, and we will, and go back to those things that we do enjoy. The Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit, coming up shortly, brings together a diverse range of people, some young, some not so young, but with one common trait, and that is optimism. I'll be involved in the day, and I'd encourage you to do the same. Look, we're all busy people, and it takes 2 hours, and you could probably find other things to do in that 2 hours, but I'd encourage you to tune in, to get involved, and then, you know, potentially you might ignite a passion within you and find something that goes on to make Greater Shepparton, Victoria, Australia and in the world a better place to be in. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.
Hey everyone, so my name is Anna Somali and I just want to talk to you guys about the upcoming Youth Summit organised by Future Voices and the Gandhi Experiment, coming up this 15th of August, 10 a.m. Australian East Coast time. So this year's theme is titled Young People Leading with Optimism Through the Pandemic and Beyond. And honestly, as a young person, studying online in these unexpected times, it is quite difficult to stay motivated and optimistic about the future. However, as a Future Voice alumni, I just want to talk to you guys about Future Voices and how it had solidified my passion to study law. So just like any other young person, you attend school and to some extent you have an idea on what you want to become. But just like the majority of us, you lack experience, you have no idea how to get there, you lack connections, and you just don't have experience in the industries you want to work in. However, with the program, you'll be exposed to various industries, people, opportunities, and most importantly, you will acquire knowledge and skills that will fundamentally prepare you for the future. I cannot emphasize that enough. So if this interests you, come along and participate within the Youth Summit and hear from prominent leaders and speakers such as Dr. Amanda Caples, Victor Perton, Margaret Hepworth, Kaylin Sobbles, Consul General Michael Kieran, and Andrew Cupston. So hope to see you there. Bye for now.
Right now, the world is very different to what we are used to. The global pandemic has changed life as we know it. As a young person, I know that it can be particularly daunting to think about the future. But decisions made by today's leaders will continue to impact our lives for years to come. That's why it's so important that we continue to engage with those decisions with strength and with optimism. On Tuesday, 15th of September, the third Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit will take place. The theme for the summit is young people leading with optimism through the pandemic and beyond. We encourage you to come together with leaders in the fields of science, diplomacy, business, commerce, and education to learn from them and give your own insights. The exceptional array of speakers for the event include Karen Sabals, President of the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Amanda Caples, Victoria's lead scientist, Michael F. Klein, the USA Consul General of Melbourne, Andrew Cumston, State Director of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Ken Murray, Educator and Campus Principal at the Wanganui campus of the Greater Shepparton Secondary College, Margaret Hepworth from the Gandhi Experiment, and Victor Perton, the Chief Optimism Officer for the Centre for Optimism. Learn from their experiences, hear what they have to say, and give your own insights as well. As young people, we can utilize our passion and optimism to help pave the path forward. We are the next generation of leaders, thinkers, and activists. And through the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit, we have the opportunity to actively participate in these discussions. Sign up today and have your voice heard.
Hey everyone, it's Leon Logothetis here, aka The Kindness Guy. I'm so excited to be a tiny part of the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit for refugee and migrant youth. Mandela has always been a hero of mine, my entire life. And although I won't be at the summit in person, I hope this video adds a little more inspiration. And literally, this is the book I'm currently reading, The Long Walk to Freedom. So some of the questions I've been asked to answer are, what makes you optimistic? And truthfully, it is people like you who make me optimistic. People who believe in themselves. People who believe in the value of human rights. People who believe in Mandela's teachings. That is what makes me optimistic. It is you. Next question. What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up? I mean, look, there are so many issues, right? Environmental issues, political issues, social issues. But to me, the biggest issue is a lack of kindness in our political system, is our lack of kindness to each other. You turn on the news and you see people screaming at each other, and you see politicians behaving like children. And the truth is that you are the future. And if you can go out into the world and create change with an empathetic heart, the world will sit up and listen. The next question, how did your leadership when young set you up for what you are doing today? Well, I was always told by my parents to be of service. I was always told by my parents to give back. And that is what I try and do. Look, I don't do it perfectly, who does? But that is one of the most important things. As the leaders of the future, it is your responsibility to serve. It is your responsibility to give back. That is what I'm counting on. That is one of the reasons why I did what I did today. I want you to be that service-orientated leader. So the last question, what would a young person study and do what you do? Look, read a lot of books, but most importantly, go out into the world, travel, meet people, inspire others, be inspired, watch documentaries, learn, know that you don't know everything by any stretch of the imagination. Become your best self every day, every moment. Be, to the best of your ability, like Nelson Mandela. That is the reality. That is how you do it. You follow the greats. You follow the greats. Thank you so much for having me. And I may not be able to be at the event, as I said, but I will be with all of you in spirit. Namaste.
I had the great pleasure, the great privilege, the great honour of meeting Nelson Mandela when he visited Sydney back in 1990, shortly after being released from jail in South Africa. I recall many things about that visit. I recall Nelson Mandela's very firm handshake, his beautiful smile, but I deeply, fondly remember the optimism, the hope springing from his speeches. Let's not forget this was a man who had just spent decades in that prison, who had lived life with the sheer indignities that it involved in apartheid South Africa, speaking with great hope for the future of his country. He, of course, went on to become South Africa's president, but at the time, his country still faced so many challenges. But the hope is something I remember coming from his speeches, from all of those comments he made on that visit. We too in Australia have our own share of challenges at the moment, care of the pandemic. They can't be compared in any way with spending decades in jail, but they are deep and everlasting challenges nonetheless. And my advice to young Australians is to simply get involved. The rebuilding of our society, of our economy, of our way of life is not going to take months or years, it's going to take several years. Get involved, raise your voice, play your part, be it at a local, a community level, a state level, a national level. Youthful enthusiasm, youthful vigour is something that this country is going to need in large numbers over the course of the next couple of years, if not the next decades. I have great optimism for the future of this country. This pandemic will end, but it's going to take a lot of hope and a lot of optimism to get us through to the other side. And this is where you all come in. All the best.
Hey everybody, my name is Steve Gross and I am the Chief Playmaker of the Life is Good Kids Foundation. Thank you for taking some time to listen to a little message from me. And what I want to do is I want to share with you a message that my dad shared with me. And when I was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, my dad said, you know, Steve, nobody in the world has control over being born. We're just born. We don't ask to be born. And most people at some point will have no control over the fact that they're going to die. People and all living things at some point die. So he's like, we don't have a choice. We don't have control over being born. And we don't have a control or choice about dying. But what we do have control over is our ability to make somebody else's journey from birth to death better because we were there to help along the way. To me, that's what being an optimist is about. It's about seeing the value that you have as a person, seeing the value that other people have in their goodness, and then being able to share your goodness with them. Optimism is also about being able to see opportunities and solutions amidst the obstacles. See, optimism isn't like, oh, everything is just great, because we know everything isn't just great. There's lots of challenges in the world. There's lots of struggles in the world. There's injustice in the world. An optimist sees that and knows that and says, what can I do to make it better? How can I leverage the good in myself, the good in others, and the opportunities in the world to make life better for other people? That's what being an optimist is about. And you can do it in a million different ways. It doesn't matter what you decide to do or be when you grow up. It doesn't matter if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or a plumber or a carpenter or a dancer or an artist. It doesn't matter what you do. It's the how and why you do it. Do you do it with a sense of love and compassion and gratitude? Do you have fun and smile and bring a joyful vibe to what you do? That's kind of the how. And the why, do you do it in a way that makes the world better, that helps people? Man, a plumber helps people every day by making sure they get clean water. A dancer helps people if they say, I want to dance because I want to inspire people. And I want to allow people to enjoy beauty. So don't worry so much about what you want to be or what you want to do. Just focus on the how and why you do it. And you'll find your magic and you'll find your passion, and then use that to grow the good in the world. The world needs you now more than ever, and I know you guys are going to deliver in your own special way. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all, and I wish you all the best.
Hi guys, it's Mashano here. I'm the chairman and CEO of Leaders of Tomorrow Group. We're actually an organization that's really passionate about empowering, equipping, and connecting entrepreneurs, young and old, to help them fulfill their dreams by serving through projects that help the community as well. So I'm really grateful for being able to be invited into this summit, and wanted to maybe share with you guys my gratitude and congratulations to all the young attendees that have invested the time during these new times, just to learn a little bit more about leadership, and also attend and connect with other people, mentors, and just be in an environment that's a bit more positive around the Nelson Mandela Regional Youth Summit. So just wanted to acknowledge you guys for doing that, and to say that you're really, really special to make the time to do that, because in this time, a lot of people are maybe hanging out and complaining about what's happening. And some people have been very badly affected by this pandemic. But all that to say, not putting any or dismissing any of those situations, because it's been very difficult for all of us. It's really, really good to at least make a different decision, to get around some people who maybe have solutions, some positive insights, and just to mingle and share ideas like you guys are doing at the summit. So you are a very rare person, and I wanted to say congratulations for attending, and please make the effort to attend. So a little bit about me, and I guess maybe why I was invited to share a few things and answer some questions with you. I was a refugee asylum seeker who migrated to Australia at the age of 16. And so maybe perhaps I have a little bit of experience in some of my friends who came with me and myself. And I guess what I could say to the question of what makes me optimistic is that from my experience, I've just learned that it's one thing to be very practical, it's another thing to be very realistic, and it's another thing to be very positive and optimistic. Because if I was to be just practical and maybe negative, I may still have been left in my home country of Zambia, where everyone told me I wouldn't amount to much. And, I was raised in a family where we didn't have a lot of resources. And so if I use that as a decision to be either realistic and say, well, if nobody else around me has changed, and then maybe nothing's going to be good that's going to happen for me as well, chances I wouldn't be here living in Bali as a executive business coach running 6 companies in 5 continents. The thing that got me there, my friends, is optimism. Lucky for me, had friends and had mentors that really believed in me a little bit more, and then basically told me I could do more, a little by little every day. And so for me, I really think that optimism really matters. And that's one of the biggest secret ingredients I've had that's led to my success in the last years after I was 16. So what are the biggest issues that maybe, needing young people to step up? To be honest, it's a very hard question. I think young people now, unlike when I was growing up, have a lot more distractions, a lot more options in life. And I think maybe counter to what other people might advise, I've come across some research that actually works in my business, where we found that, if you, for example, have a tennis ball and throw it to a young person, they can probably focus on one thing and catch it, right? So imagine the tennis ball is a metaphor for opportunities. Now, let's just say now I give you 10 tennis balls and I say, hey, you want all 10? And you're like, sure, I would love to make more money. I would love to have more friends. I would love to have more jobs. I would love to have more businesses. And then I throw all 10 at the same time at you. What's going to happen? You're probably not going to catch any ball. And this is a sad reality, I think. For one of the biggest issues I find in the young people today is that because of our social media, Facebook, smartphones, computers, access to internet, we have so much opportunity and ideas bombarding us at the same time. And I think what leaders need to step up into is maybe getting some guidance around how to focus on one thing. That's right. It's very, very hard to do. And I think it's a good thing. I'm a big believer in having many, many passions. But the sooner you can get to focusing on what you want to do in your life and how you want to make money in your life, and then what skills you think you might need to be successful in that particular craft area, business, position, job, call it what you want, and then just try and focus on that one thing. I think that's going to help a lot. So hopefully we can share more of that. The third is how does my leadership actually help me when I was young set me up in today? Well, for me, I think what was my biggest saving grace, my friends, is one of the biggest things I think young leaders need is a sense of curiosity. That's being able to be excited about anything that is different to you. So it might be, if you're from African background like me, I was super curious about how Aboriginals lived. I was curious about how the Western world worked. So I wanted to travel to those places and go experience it for myself. I was also curious about people who maybe had different situations to me. I grew up as a farm boy in Zambia, Africa, and yet I met other people who were city people. They did different things. Or I might have watched a movie and was inspired by someone who just did something that was just so foreign out of my world, but I was very, very curious. So I think one of the biggest things young people can do as a person is step back and get very curious about things that are different. Don't judge them too quickly. And if you're young, try and do more new things and just have a little bit of courage to understand that you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but it's in those mistakes that you actually learn. So I really hope some of you guys can get something out of that. Then the last part is, what would young people need to study, I think, to do what I do? I guess for me, it's a funny one. One of the biggest lessons I think I have that have helped me in my success today in business, at least in leadership, coaching that at the moment, is just telling people to, again, study, biographies of the great people, get interested in things like social skills, get interested in negotiation skills, get interested in understanding your own personality and what makes you tick, what are your strengths and weaknesses, get interested in conflict resolution. How do you overcome a negative situation? Maybe you get into an argument with a friend or a teacher or a leader or a parent. How can you use the right tools to influence that situation so it doesn't become very negative for you? And I think the last one is, I think as a young person, I was always interested in reading. And I don't know if we can count that as study, but I think it's one thing to go to school and get a good education, and I'm a big believer in that. But, I have a son. I think if I were to give him advice, I would rather, if I had everything taken away, including his school, what is the one thing I'd want him to study? I would want him to study the ability to learn. I'd really want him to know how to learn. So what I mean by that is, it's one thing to go get a curriculum and the teacher gives you mathematics and you have to read the book and repeat what he said. It's another thing for you to go study how the brain works in terms of how you retain information. It's another thing in speed reading, maybe. It's another thing in how to have comprehension skills, how to translate that information so you can communicate it to your friends and others. These other parts is what I feel education is all about, which is to induce from within gifts, being able for you to learn how to study any field, anytime, and be able to command confidence because you actually understand things at the root issue. So this is beyond schooling, my friends, or at least formal education. I've learned this, unfortunately, later on in my life, about the ability to be able to learn. And what that did for me is it allowed me then to get curious, if you remember that, to go back into being able to learn anything about any topic. And that served me so well in business, because no matter whether there's a trend in business, technology, I'm programming, I know how to learn. I follow a system of how to do that. If I want to learn about a new language, I know how to learn and have a system to follow to do that. So I really hope that inspires you guys to get curious about that. And if you have any questions for me about anything, I'll be hopefully at the summit able to introduce a few people. But later on, I'd love to connect with you guys on chats if we have the opportunity, or on social media afterwards. So I wish you the very, very best on the summit as well. And really, really wanted to congratulate everyone and encourage you guys to really sign up and join this event, because you'll be able to meet with people who can really help you grow and deal with some of the situations or difficult times that we're in, but how to basically turn the lemon into lemonade so that you can seize that opportunity and look back maybe 5 years from now when the pandemic is gone and say, I'm so glad I attended this event because I got the skills I needed to become a great leader. So I wish you all the success. Thank you very much. It's Mashano here.
Hi, Andrew Crisp, Emergency Management Commissioner. Well, it's great to join you. Unfortunately, I can't do it physically, or you can't get together physically as you normally would for this particular summit. And for me, I've been asked to speak about young people, about optimism and about the future. And I guess my starting position in relation to that, I think the world's in really, really good hands at the moment. I am so impressed by the young people that I come into contact with, that I listen to, that I see on the television. I think it's a very active generation at the moment that's prepared to stand up for what they believe in, and we've seen incredible examples with regards to climate change, with school children taking to the streets, and we should listen to that. And I reflect on when I was at the same age, and I'll say I was pretty selfish. It was all about me. I wanted to play sport. I wanted to catch up with my mates. I really didn't take too much interest in social causes and the things that have generated a lot more interest for me as I've got older. So I think young people have got a bad rap by some people up to this point in time. So I just want to say I think you're doing an absolutely amazing job. And we know that there are young people that come from different backgrounds, that they come from troubled times and challenging backgrounds, and that doesn't matter whether you're a refugee from migrant community or from other communities. We all face our challenges. I recall myself. I came to Australia when I was 12 years old from England, and I absolutely hated it. Hated it so much that I remember one day I was walking to school. We were living up in Newcastle in New South Wales, that I actually I threw myself into a drain, and so I became wet, and I had to go home and say, well, I can't go to school now. It got to a point where my parents were seriously thinking about sending me back to England to live with my grandparents. But it's about persevering. As I said, we all have tough times in our lives, and we've got to get over that. And as young people, I know you're absorbing from so many people, so many pieces of information. And I guess it's that thing for me about, and I'd like to still think after 42 years of work, for me, it's always about glass half full. It's always about seeing the best in people, the best in a situation. And I think if that's the approach we take to life, we'll be a long way ahead of where those that don't adopt that similar approach. For me, it's always also been about keeping your options open. You might have a plan in relation to where you're going with school or a course after school. In my career, my police career, it was always about, I thought I'd go down that particular path, but invariably another opportunity came up and I took it. And 99% of the time it worked out in my favour. So I guess, for me, it's about always keep your options open. Don't shut down anything. Just think it through. And sometimes it'll be your gut that will tell you that. It doesn't matter. You might have many, many years of experience, but in yourself, you'll know what the right thing to do is. Look, I could talk for a long time on this, but I will leave it there. But I certainly look forward to, and I hope I get an invitation next year and where we can actually come together physically. But as I said, just stay positive. I know we're living and studying and working in this COVID environment at the moment. I know it's become a cliche, but we'll get through this together. But it is important that you look after yourselves, you look after each other. Today is Are You OK Day. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It certainly doesn't hurt to ask a mate, ask a friend, are you OK? So thank you. Take care.
Well, as we wade our way through this pandemic, what makes me optimistic is seeing just how our community has banded together to overcome it. Our residents here in Greater Shepparton have put each other's health first and continue to act in a COVID-19 safe way, which really does build my confidence that we will get to the other side of this. It makes me optimistic for what we can achieve as a region once we are past this virus. Another thing that makes me optimistic is the opportunity we have for growth here in Greater Shepparton. Now, prior to the pandemic, we were really building our reputation as a bold and exciting regional city. And while work is continuing on this in the background, I can't wait to see this really ramped up again once restrictions have lifted and we are back to a new normal. We have had some terrific support from the state and federal government in recent times, which has positioned us so well to make the most of the opportunities that will present following the pandemic. And there will be plenty of them. I'm so optimistic about that. Clearly, the major issue now needing young leaders to stand up is the COVID-19 emergency. We need our young leaders to stand up, have a voice, and help young people in our state understand that this virus is real, it is deadly, and they are not immune. Young people listen to their friends, they listen to their peers, so we need our young leaders to be strong and have their say. Another is our changing climate. Now this year, Greater Shepparton City Council declared a climate emergency and adopted a 2030 zero carbon emission target. Our climate is changing, and it is the future of our young people which will be most affected. This movement really has already been led by the younger generation, which has been amazing to see. In Greater Shepparton, we have a project called the Shepparton Statement, which calls on our younger community members to have their say on climate change. We need our young leaders to contribute to push for change in this space. You will be heard, you will be supported, and with everyone's support, you will shape the future. As a teenager, I was a happy-go-lucky person who took things in life as they came along. Growing into a young adult and going through life's challenges that came my way, I dealt with them with a glass half full approach. That is, the attitude to solve problems with positivity and looking at the brighter side of life. I strongly believed in 2 P's, which were patience and persistence when attempting to remove the stumbling blocks standing on my way. My values as a young person were centered around kindness, respect, and hard work, with realistic optimism to achieve my goals. And these characteristics and beliefs have surely helped me in my journey towards becoming a mayor. You know what? The best part about being a councillor is that we come from all walks of life. There is no designated degree or certificate. All you need to be is passionate about your community and interested in making positive changes to your local environment with a time commitment, of course. So I am passionate about both those things. I want to see Greater Shepparton thrive, and it is my privilege to be part of that journey. Local government needs more young councillors. We need to be across every demographic, every culture, and every pocket of our municipality to help us make the best decisions possible for our community. So I encourage all young leaders to become interested in your council, start following council meetings, and be up to date with changes in your region, because we need our young leaders engaged to set up our future. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Paulo Nsubu Gachove, Chair of Future Voices, Nelson Mandela Center, Australia, Shepparton. You are encouraged to participate in the 3rd Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit, Younger People Leading with Optimism Through Pandemic and Beyond. The focus of this year, it is great learning and transforming opportunity. Self-empowerment learning include inspirations and potential development through being an optimistic leader, and lessons based on Nelson Mandela and Gandhi experiences. Developing a career focus through basic knowledge, experiences, optimism in life, network building, enhancing people and other skills, improved understanding of scientific roles, applications and values in life, innovations and work experiences, understanding roles and the work of diplomatic staff and their impacts on nations, familiarizing with self, with the Foreign Affairs Department, DFAT, what it does in Australia. Learning through sharing, participation, coaching, mentorship, and interactive dialogues, and the development of global good life living skills and competencies.
What makes you optimistic?
One of my strong grounds for optimism is our work at Future Voices to help younger people harbor tolerant, self-building attitudes and values of positive survival. For example, live and let live. It makes the world better for all. It helps people understand the common values of humanity, making life better for minorities and the majority alike. This is the post-COVID-19 pandemic and beyond optimism message to all. Allow me to quote Mandela's optimistic leadership knowledge. Quote, "What accounts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we make to the lives of the others that will determine the significance of the life we lead."
What are the big issues that young leaders need to step up?
Issues include sustainability, achieving sustainable development goals, the environment, equity and fairness, global share of the resources, universal peace for, and indeed learning how to learn from own environment and through each individual's cognitive and metacognitive, affective and motivational learning models. That is learning from experience. With the growing widespread of resources of information technology, the individual's ability using cognitive, metacognitive, affective and motivational learning tools, these do provide a great empowerment routes and pathways towards the individual fitting well in the dynamic and changing post-COVID world that require collective actions, respect of each other, unit of purpose, leading with gratitude, living with positive intents, and life for the others, including inclusions, being ready to make a difference, making contribution to the opportunities and the sacrifices, be forgiving and letting things go, in addition to remaining encouraged and optimistic.
How did your leadership when young set you up for what you're doing today?
Generally, from my childhood, I have been a tireless contributing person, putting others above myself and lived the life for the others. That is sacrificing.
What would a young person study to do what you do?
I encourage the younger people to equip themselves with the above mentioned skills, knowledge, abilities and competences, including continuous learning and a positive engagement with the others where they happen to be living. That's the inclusion, and understanding the others by reflection and empathy. For example, I have studied a number of different things in life, generally aligned with adapting to fitting the changing environment. I undergraduated in accounting, proceeded on in advocacy, proceeded on organization and human resource management and development, becoming a lecturer in this area.
G'day, my name's Matthew Walker. I'm a senior constable at the Shepparton Police Station. My role is a multicultural liaison there. Today, Caitlin's going to ask a few questions.
What makes you an optimistic?
Well, over the past seeing the change, I guess. In the past 10 years, I've seen a massive shift towards multiculturalism, gender equality, as well as workplace fairness.
What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up?
Gee, that is an excellent question, and one that probably many people could try and answer. But I guess if you're thinking about tackling issues, you tackle something that you're passionate about, something that you have an interest in. I really like fishing, so if I had something to focus, I'd try and make the waterways around Shepparton a better habitat for those fish. Yeah, so tackle something you're interested in, something that you enjoy. That's probably the easiest way to do something.
How did your leadership when young set you up for what you're doing today?
Growing up, I moved around. I went to 4 different high schools through metro and country areas. I went to schools where there was 3,000 kids. I went to a school where there was 100 kids, and I got to meet heaps of different people throughout that period. Worked and played different areas, like different sports and with different types of leaders. Always enjoyed learning things from them, and also when it was my turn to step up and captain the footy team, I got to do that. Yeah, I guess just being aware that when you make a mistake, that it's not something you should be worried about. It's just something you can learn from.
What would a young person study and do to do what you do?
There's nothing really you have to study in sort of high school and that. Obviously legal studies can help get you a little bit of an understanding in relation to policing, but really at high school, you just finish high school, make sure you don't get in trouble with police, have an interest that's community minded, so if you're doing some volunteer work somewhere, and if you do get a part-time job, have it somewhere where you're doing a bit of customer service. Police cry out for people with customer service skills, and that have a good mindset towards building a better community.
Hi, my name is Chester Elton. I'm coming to you from just outside New York City in the United States. I'm delighted that you've asked me to be a part of your conference, the third conference for the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit for Refugee and Migrant Youth. That's a lot to remember. You know, I love the theme of young people leading with optimism through the pandemic and beyond, because I think that real leaders do lead with optimism. Now, a little bit about my background. I have a wonderful friend, Adrian Gostick, and for 20 years we've been writing on leadership. In fact, we're ranked in the top 10 leadership gurus in the world. And we just finished a wonderful book that I think plays right into your conference, and it's called Leading with Gratitude. You know, I don't think you can lead with optimism without leading with gratitude. And it's really interesting. I love the questions you've asked me. The one is, what makes me so optimistic? You know what makes me optimistic? Young people like you that are eager to make a difference, that are eager to jump in and solve the problems, whether it be pandemic, whether it be racial inequality, maybe social injustice. Because, you know, the energy and the optimism of youth, you can't replicate that. There's no substitute for enthusiasm. So thank you for your willingness to jump in and get involved. What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up in? Well, I think it's inclusion. I think we need young leaders like you to be loving, to be caring, and to be inclusive, to make sure that no one's left out. You know, whether you're rich or you're poor, you're black or you're white, or whatever color you are, let's make sure that we all remember this, that we're all brothers and sisters, that we're all human, that we all deserve a little bit of happiness in life. And you know, in our research, and this is over 20 years of research in leadership, the greatest leaders that I have ever known assumed positive intent about the people around them. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to assume that you're trying to do a good job, and in trying to do a good job, you might make mistakes, and that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. We can fix the mistake. You are not the problem. You have a problem. So collectively, let's get together and solve that problem. Let's not assume negative intent. In other words, because, oh, you're from such a place, then you must not be a good person. Let's assume that everybody is a good person until proven wrong. Let's assume positive intent about each other. How did my leadership when I was young set me up for what I do today? You know, my parents, Dalton, Elton, and Irene, Tanner, Elton, taught me that the best way to learn to love people, the best way to learn is to serve. And so for 2 years, when I was 19 years old, I served a mission for my church in southern Italy. I didn't get paid for that. In fact, I paid my own way. And my job was to wake up every morning and make somebody else's day a little better. When we serve each other, we learn to love each other. So be of service. It could be as simple as picking up some garbage or visiting some elderly couple or person in the day, writing a little note of encouragement to someone. We can all do these little random acts of kindness every day and learn to serve each other. And I hope you'll incorporate assuming positive intent and random acts of kindness into your leadership. Lastly, what would a young person study to do what you do? I think studying anything and being curious about everything is a great way to prepare yourself to be a leader. I would encourage you to read a lot. I would encourage you to surround yourself with positive people and look for opportunities to serve as an individual and as a group. Well, you know, I have great respect for Nelson Mandela. I had a chance to visit South Africa and visit his cell and learn about his work. And the great thing about what Nelson Mandela did was, even though he was persecuted and he was jailed, when he came out, he forgave. He brought people together and said, the past is the past. Here's where we are. Let's move forward to a positive future. And that's what I hope for you. I hope that you will lead with gratitude, that you will lead with optimism, that you will assume positive intent, that you will fill your day with random acts of kindness, and that you will help us all build a more optimistic and better world. Well, I hope these few words are encouraging to you, because your few words and this conference have been very encouraging for me. Go forth, lead with gratitude, be grateful, be kind, be patient. Take care. Good luck with your conference. Cheers.
Hi, this is my sister Ananda, my dad Michael, and I'm Camilla. And what makes you optimistic?
I find the fact that there are millions of people out there who are old, young, and in the middle, who are ready to take up roles of leadership and make an impact on our world. I find that really, really inspiring.
And somewhat similarly, but with specific focus on your generation, the next generation, I feel really optimistic because I feel that the next generation is not waiting anymore. Is not thinking that they need to learn and grow more before they actually start to make a voice, to take action for themselves. You can see that in the climate marches around the world. And that makes me optimistic. I don't think we have the time to wait for your generation to come around and sort of think that maybe you need to take action. This is the time to take action now. And I see lots of young leaders coming up and making that difference. So that makes me really optimistic.
What are the big issues that need young leaders to step up?
There are many issues around the world at the moment. Not the least of them, of course, is the current crisis of COVID. But I would think that in amongst all the issues, including geopolitics and environment and human rights issues right around the world, is the two most prominent issues that we need to deal with now is bring back balance into our leadership. So there's more feminine wisdom that is driving our decisions collectively and individually, and deal with the climate, the very rapid climate change that we're facing. So I tend to say that if you want to take action in places that are really relevant to our future, it's either in raising the feminine or lowering temperature. I would say these are the prime ones.
How did your leadership when you were young set you up for what you are doing today?
Ever since I was young, I had a sense of looking for justice. When I saw injustice around me, I grew up in a country that had a lot of difficulties and troubles, still does. I always felt when I saw something that was wrong, there was a feeling to it. And it wasn't just a concept that had to come to my head from learning, but there is a sense, an inner sense of justice that I always felt was there. And I think it does exist in every other human being. So I say tuning into your inner sense of what's fair and what's not is a very helpful one as a young leader. Yeah.
What would a young person study and do to become a leader?
Well, I think learning skills that help you become an effective activist is really important. And yeah, that's what I would study and do.
I would suggest that it's less to do with content or with information and more to do with skill sets. For example, emotional intelligence and the ability to continuously learn new things, learning how to learn in a sense. And probably the most important in the context of the activism and the change that we need to see is the ability to bridge over to other people who might not think like you. So learning how to create bridges across diverse opinion, learning how to create movement from within multiple opinions and ideas and approaches to solutions is an important one. And lastly, I would say that what I would call mind fitness or mindfulness, centeredness, the ability of a leader to stay calm and peaceful and being able to bring that sort of peacefulness into any situation and deal with it in a measured way is very useful. Yeah. So thank you from the Bartura family. This is Ananda, Camilla, Michael. We are very excited to contribute this video to the Youth Summit. And we're looking forward to attend soon as well. Bye.
Signing off.
My name is Larissa Falla and I'm the General Manager at Gambina. We are an Aboriginal-led organisation based in Shepparton. Gambina offers support to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and youth actively engaged in education, training and employment. Regardless of background, young people in the Greater Shepparton region have faced significant challenges this year. And it's for this reason that it's even more important for us to send messages of optimism and encouragement. We wanted to say how proud we are of you, of your ability to be so agile in changing circumstances, whether it be the shift to remote learning if you're at school or the reduction in hours at work because of the pandemic. I've been asked to answer a couple of questions. Why am I optimistic? I'm optimistic for this region because we have a beautifully diverse community. If we cultivate respect and share our stories and time, there is so much that can be accomplished. There are great support services out there to help, and there are a lot of like-minded people who love where we live and are willing to support the next generation of leaders coming through. So I encourage you to seek help, ask questions, respect each other and work together. What are the big issues needing young people to step up? Well, you as the young people are the leaders of tomorrow. You can build a community and a future that works for you and your peers, but you have to work together. There are a lot of issues out there that need addressing, and that will call for you to step up. But I would encourage you to explore what is worth the effort. Don't try and tackle everything. Define your personal values and find your purpose or what lights the fire in your belly first, and then set about putting your energy into that issue. If it is something that you're truly passionate about, then it won't seem like any effort at all. How did your leadership when young set you up for what you were doing today? I was a reluctant leader, but one thing that I did do was I observed people and I took every opportunity to learn from those around me. Then doors opened up for me. My advice to you is to work hard, set the standard, and don't waver from what you believe in. And you will be seen as a leader well before you believe you are one yourself. And finally, a lesson learned from Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." At Gambina, we encourage active engagement in formal education, but we also recognise that education comes from the everyday as well. Your family, your friends, your peers, your teachers, your own life experiences, they all offer learning experiences and opportunities. So be open and respectful to learning from those around you in the everyday. Value education as a lifelong journey. Nelson Mandela was a very humble man, and he always saw himself as a learner, and that's a great lesson for all of us to learn.
Hello, I'm Ross McPherson, Executive Chairman of the McPherson Media Group based here in Shepparton. We publish a number of newspapers in Northern Victoria, magazines in print and online, and conduct a number of events. I had a mixed career of law and journalism before coming back to the company, which had been run by my family for some 5 generations. My father and my grandfather before him were heavily involved in community affairs, and they believed that it was important for us to give back to the community, which had been very kind to us. And I'm sure they've had an influence on my approach to the community. And one of my community hats is as patron of Fairly Leadership, which I helped establish some 25 years ago. Coincidentally, it was after the community was rebuilding following the last recession we had back in the early 1990s. And that recession proved to be a catalyst for a range of positive initiatives, many of which are still visible today, and Fairly Leadership is one of those. We now have well over 500 Fairly Fellows contributing to their communities in ways that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. And my guess is that the current COVID crisis and the economic issues and challenges that inevitably will follow will produce a similar sort of, if you like, range of new initiatives, and people will be looking at ways in which they can adapt and do things in more interesting and more efficient ways. Some people are inclined, I think, in times of difficulty to withdraw and blame their circumstances, but the inclination of most of us is to adapt to these changing circumstances. And we know from 6,000 years of recorded history anyway that opportunity always follows difficulty, that recession then is followed by progression, and populist upheaval is usually followed by periods of stability. Back in the Dark Ages and the Black Death in Europe, we saw the flourishing of art and science and literature and education in the period of the Renaissance. That's how history tends to go up and down, as it has for 6,000 years. So how do we make the most of the situation now? I've observed, looking at leadership and a range of leaders over the years, that they all share 2 or 3 common elements. The first and most important is that they have a vision for the cause or the goal or project that they're chasing, if you like. And then they have a degree of focus that stops them getting distracted by other things and concentrating on what that goal is and pursuing it. And they usually have a degree of energy that moves them towards that desired result, that creates action. And those 3 elements seem to be common amongst many, many great leaders. So I don't think leadership itself is that complex. They come in all shapes and sizes. And if you add to those 2 or 3 elements of leadership the golden rule that you treat other people as you like to be treated yourself, you'll have no trouble encouraging and coaxing people to come along with you on your leadership journey. I think it's worth, while you're talking over the next day or so about the great issues facing us not only locally but globally and nationally, such as climate change and alleviating poverty and educational opportunity, that you also give thought to things that you are truly passionate about rather than causes that you think you should be pursuing. Because if you're passionate about it, That's what will get you out of bed and ready for action and move you towards your goal much more quickly. I think another useful thing we can do during this sort of lockdown period is accelerate our learning, not just about your studies, but about life and leadership. And there are really only two ways to learn. One's your own experience and the other's other people's experience. With our own experience, it's useful to periodically reflect on how we're building that experience, how we're learning from our mistakes and not repeating them. And some people will have 30 years of valuable experience building on it year after year. And there are other people who have 1 year's experience 30 times. And you don't want to be in that category. So I think there's never been a better time to digest and access and devour other people's experience, because most of the great leaders in the world, and in fact people who have excelled in so many fields of human endeavour, have written books about how they did it. And they're easily accessible. Many are free on the internet. Those published more recently are available at your library and school library. So I think being aware of how you're using your time usefully is part of the key to progressing quickly towards the goals that you want to achieve. And one of those is the distractions provided by mobile devices, which are deliberately designed these days with social media to give us the impression that we're learning and connecting with people, but they're addictive. And you sit down at the end of the day and say, what did I achieve? And I think reflecting on that is a useful check, if you like, to make sure that you're using your time, valuable time, to enrich your mind and spirit, that you're not just spending time reading and learning, but investing in your friendships and your family. And as we move out of lockdown and social movement becomes easier, consider extending your network and investing in mentor relationships and not being afraid to ask people for help. You'll be surprised how many people will help you in your journey if only you ask. So I hope those are some useful thoughts. Best of luck with your summit. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Capp, Head of La Trobe Shepparton Campus, and we're delighted to be supporting the 3rd Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit. Congratulations to everyone involved in this event. What gives me cause for optimism is seeing the wonderful work that's happening in our Shepparton community, with so many people involved in initiatives to make sure that we're all staying safe and well and connected, that people who need additional support are receiving it, and that in general, no one is falling through the cracks during a very difficult and challenging time for all of us. I'm thinking of things like primary school children writing letters to some of our aged care residents who can't receive visitors and are at risk of being quite isolated. I'm thinking of wonderful community organisations like Foodlink, which connects caterers who need work with families who need help to provide meals, and so many other examples of community members taking extraordinary lengths to ensure that our collective health and well-being is as good as it can be. And I find that really inspiring, and it gives me great cause for optimism and hope in the future. As young leaders, you have an opportunity to think about how you want to contribute to the collective health and well-being of your community. I hope you have a fabulous summit. Thank you.
I'm Rebecca Woolstencroft. I'm the CEO of MB&M, a local business in Shepparton that employs about 40 people. And I've also had some board roles, including the chairperson at Golden Valley Health. What gives me optimism is that people ultimately want others to do well. And there might be some things that get in the way of that sometimes. But I think if we can tap into the reasons for that and that deep-seated belief that things could be improved and they want them to be improved, then I think they can be. And so that's really what gives me optimism. I think the big issues that young leaders need to step up to include some really important ones such as climate change and a need to do something more, far more than what we've been doing. I think we need to ensure equity of access to the basic things in life, such as health, education, transportation. We need to give everyone equal opportunity to do well. And I think the last thing that needs to be really reconsidered is education and how we educate our young people, because I don't believe that the current system is engaging and rewarding enough for the people within it that they wish to continue on that journey. I was really set up, I think, in my leadership journey from my parents, really, who gave me this value of believing in education, believing in bettering yourself so that you can be independent and a contributor to society, and that contribution comes in a variety of ways, and what those ways are really up to you. And I think, therefore, they helped me be surrounded by people who encouraged me, and then that set me on a pathway to seek out others who wanted to encourage me and to make sure that I was successful in my endeavours. And ultimately, I think the lesson in all of that is to seek out people who make you feel good about yourself and want you to do well and to push you into being better than you are. So I think that's where the leadership came from when I was a young person. And I guess if you wanted to do what I do, well, really you're going to set yourself up to going off to university. You do a Bachelor of Commerce, and then I became a chartered accountant. And then from there I discovered a love for understanding how organisations worked and how they could be effective, which all centred around leadership. And that was all about reading, lots and lots of reading, and then seeking people out who knew lots more about it than I did, and having really robust conversations about how you make those things a reality in life. So that was the journey for me. I wish you all a great success at your summit.
What makes you optimistic?
Oh, so much! The sunshine, the flowers, my family who are with me here while I'm doing this recording. People, the world, us working together. Together everyone achieves more. The opportunities out there, innovation, being surrounded by amazing people who are doing amazing things.
What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up?
Look, I think young leaders need to be passionate. I think we all need to recognise that, you know, once upon a time we all thought that the government was responsible for making an impact on humanity and for really helping us make the world a better place. But I think now it's really evident that we all have a role to play. We all have a part to play in that, and it's all about us really doing our part to make the world, the planet, humanity better.
How did your leadership when young set you up for what you are doing today?
Wow. So, I mean, I've always had a thirst for learning and a thirst for knowledge, and I think that's a big part. I've always loved people. So I think I run a business community now where we connect businesses who have common interests, and we're all about using profit as a force for good. You know, I was always involved in leadership programs when I was at school. I was involved in lots of drama. I loved acting. I don't know if you can tell. And I loved going in programs and pushing myself and stretching myself and creating opportunities that would allow me to keep improving and be better. So for me, you know, really it's about involving yourself and giving yourself the opportunity, and it doesn't matter if you're chosen or not chosen. It's part of the learning process, and it's just about keep pushing yourself to, you know, be better and keep striving to, you know, make those little continuous improvements in yourself and the people around you.
What would a young person study and do to do what you do?
Well, as I said, I run a business community, and for me, it's all about igniting the passion in someone and believing in them when they don't necessarily believe in themselves. So I first studied teaching, and I worked as a teacher, and I loved it. And for me, a teacher's role is so critical in society. It's all about how do you make kids feel amazing about themselves, finding that those little gems of strength in them that make them feel amazing and make them feel on top of the universe, like they can achieve anything. And for me, I've just kept that passion going through my business career. It's about believing in people when they don't necessarily believe in themselves, and helping them find their passion and helping direct them and support them in being the best they can be. So thank you so much for involving Symphony 7 in the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit. We are honoured and thrilled. We think the youth are definitely our future, and we're absolutely thrilled to be involved.
What makes you optimistic?
Hello all, it's Natalie Foeng here, CFO of Yarra Valley Water. What makes me optimistic is surrounding myself with people who have a positive view of the future. Optimism is a choice. It's a choice of whether you see the world as an upside or a downside. This pandemic we are facing brings about a whole heap of new opportunities. It's not a matter of survival, it's a matter of thriving. It's not a failure. It is certainly more of a learning. And it's not a challenge, it brings about lots of opportunities. So together we can speak this positive future into existence. And to be successful as a leader today, it really is about surrounding yourself with positive voices. Even better if it's your own.
What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up?
Well, there are many issues for us to tackle. And what I find really helpful are the Sustainable Development Goals, which serve as a reminder really of what's important to us as a human race. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it kind of acts as a blueprint for me in terms of guiding us towards a better future, a more sustainable future for all of us. And businesses now are having to think beyond just the financials. So they're having to think about the decisions and the choices that they're making and really justifying what value they are creating in an economic, an environmental and a social sense. So Australia is currently ranked 38th of around 162 countries around the world with its progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, and there's certainly more work that can be done. Some of the areas of challenge include the all-important topic of climate change, and we know that there certainly is more that can be done by businesses to contribute towards a much more energy efficient, environmentally friendly, a more sustainable world. And what policies do we need to be able to support that in our country? Then there's the all-important topic of gender equality as well. We know that more diverse voices at the table, having greater women participate and influence in decision making and choices that businesses and organisations make in leadership roles can make a difference. Good for people, good for performance and good for planet. And last but not least in my mind, there is one other area which is important for us at the moment, and that is the topic of responsible consumption and production. It's something that we all as consumers in our everyday lives can influence, and it's something that businesses need to be thinking about when it comes to what they bring to the table.
How did your young leadership set you up for what you are doing today?
Yes, that's a great question. I've always been a bit of a risk taker, so embracing the opportunities and having the breadth of roles in my career has really put me in good stead for where I am today. So, really encourage you to get out there and get some real experience out in industry. And knowing what your purpose is in all of that is super important. Some of the greatest mentors and leaders that I've ever worked for have taught me one thing, and that is that the technical stuff you can always learn, and it's not the technical stuff that really drives success. What it is actually your values, and also understanding why you get out of bed each day. What is your purpose and what do you survive for? And starting out in industry for me was really not a matter of being at my computer each day. It was about getting out and being out in the field. So really like a human sponge. I walked the factory floors to learn where products were made and how they were made. I learnt about the supply chain and how it got from the factory through to the table in our household. And also being out in the shop front, listening to customers and staff out, serving the community. So that's all really important because it's like collecting data. When you've got all this insight, you can then step back from it and really make some choices around how can I make things better.
What would a young person study and need to do what you do?
So finance leaders of today have typically come from grassroots business, commerce and accounting degrees. What I would say though in today's world is that leaders actually benefit immensely from real life experiences, and so it's the combination of those education foundations and discipline complemented with those experiences out in industry which really put us in good stead to lead our organisations. And the CFOs of today really are not just about being commercially savvy or financially focused. It really is also about being strategic, being able to be a catalyst and influence different outcomes across the business. And it's something that requires great communication skills and people skills. And so you need to be able to be in a mindset of stepping away from your office and being a business partner to the organisation, having a seat and a voice at the table. But also, importantly, sustainability has to be on the agenda, because investors, shareholders, customers and community, they're demanding something different these days. And it's not just about the profits or the dividends, it really is about what other value are we generating for the environment and society and the community as well. Most importantly in all of that, it's to be true to yourself. So what I found really helpful is to stay human and be authentic in your leadership. If you can be yourself throughout all of this and stay true to your passion and what your values say, then it will put you in great stead.
Good morning and welcome. My name is John Cortese. I'm Principal of Notre College. I thank you for the opportunity of saying a few words in Shepparton's third Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit. I think the theme this time is brilliant. The theme, young people leading with optimism through this pandemic and beyond. And we all need to go and live a life where we're going to challenge ourselves to do a great job as leaders. I was asked what makes me optimistic. I believe that all people have good things in them. I believe that in a crisis, we have a challenge to seek improvement, to do things better personally, and to learn something new. And I also have a belief that in reality, we're going to do things better and things will work out eventually. I was also asked what are the big issues that young leaders are going to face today. There is no doubt that the big issues are going to be around mental health and how we address that, social media, the respect that people have in society, the caring for others and the caring for the environment, and setting goals that are going to make your life better and make the life of the people in the world generally better. How did leadership when I was a young man, how did it help me to become what I am today? And I would say without doubt the greatest opportunity that I had was that I had great mentors as a young man. They challenged me to try new things. And some of the challenges they threw my way were scary, but they believed that I was capable of doing it, so they had faith in my ability, and I gave it a go. And I was supported magnificently by the mentors, whether I succeeded or failed. So be on the lookout for great mentors and have a yes mentality. That means accept challenges that are thrown your way and try your hardest to meet those challenges. And finally, I was asked, as a young person today, what are the things that people need to do? I would say the most important thing that you've got that you need to do is work out what you're passionate about. Work out what you love doing, work out what you like being involved in. And then when you've decided that, go and work really hard to make sure you do the very best that you can in that role. And at all times, seek guidance, seek help. And if you do that, you'll end up realising that you don't work a day in your life. You're just doing something that you're passionate about, that you love, and your life is going to be one glorious life. I wish you well through this summit. I wish you well through life in general. And I ask you to try your hardest at everything that you do. And whenever there comes a little bit of a hurdle, a little bit of a trip up in your way, give it your best shot to overcome it, and you'll find you have a magnificent life. Have a great day. Enjoy life.
Hi, my name is David Card, coming to you from Regis Jesuit High School in Denver, Colorado, USA. I'm honored to give some notes of inspiration for the 3rd annual Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit. What makes me optimistic is my sense of faith, my practice of faith, and really always remembering that we're not alone. That God is with us in all that we do, and we can find God's presence in the people around us if we're willing to be attentive to everything going around us. The big issues that young leaders need to step up to today, we're doing a really good job these days of using our voices. But I think we really need to pause and consider whether we can hear each other. And so right now, for all of us globally, I think the skill of listening is one that we also need to practice attentively and try and break down the things that separate us and look for those things that unite us and remind us of our common humanity. When I was young, the things that really stand out to me in terms of what set me up for leadership is really having identifying people who would mentor me. And I'm not sure it was a formal sort of thing, but I can recall many people in my life that I admired and I wanted to be like. And so I think identifying people in our surroundings that we do admire and that we want to model ourselves after is really important. And to spend some time in conversation with them. I think a lot of adults are really interested in sharing whatever they can with young people to help them strengthen themselves in their leadership skills. But mostly it really is about a strong desire to serve others. And when you can identify somebody who serves others well, whether it's an adult or another young person, that's a person worth getting to know. In terms of what a young person might study in order to do what I do, as a school leader, I think there are lots of things that you can study. But what I really think is most important is that you always engage in things that bring you joy. And it won't be constant joy. There will be difficulties and setbacks along the way. But when we have a deep feeling of joy with the things that we're interested in, that's a sign of our being called in the direction of God. And something that we ought to pursue. And so find that passion that you have and engage with it and stay committed to it. Dedication will deliver you to the place that you're looking to be in terms of your leadership. I hope this conference is a great success. I wish I could be with you, and greetings again from USA.
Hi everyone, my name's David Tennant. I'm the CEO of a not-for-profit community organisation called Family Care that has its main office in Shepparton and provides services across the Goulburn Valley. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today. A little bit different this year's Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Forum. We're all getting used to having to communicate remotely, but I suppose it does have the advantage of allowing a lot more people to be involved. So congratulations on choosing to do so, and I hope you have a great day. Rashidi sent me a few questions and suggested that someone here might be able to put them to me, and because we're doing our distancing, I'll read them to myself. What makes me optimistic? That one's pretty easy. It's people like you who make me optimistic, and I think our young people are hardworking, resilient, good-humoured, and I think that sets us up for a fantastic future. So I'm very excited about what your futures will bring to all of us as we tackle some pretty tricky problems. What are the big issues that need young leaders to step up? Maybe answering that, I'll reflect a bit on something that our generation hasn't done a particularly good job of. We no longer are able to talk about difficult problems around the design of policy and proper solutions to support human beings and to support our planet, without retreating into our corners and shouting at each other. And it's rare when you take those sorts of polarised views that you get good outcomes. So I think as we hand over the baton, what we need from you to do is to reclaim the opportunity to have respectful, thoughtful debate. You can still be passionate about issues, you can still have very strong views about things, but winning an argument is less important than getting the best outcome. So good luck with that, and I'm sorry we've let you down so poorly. How did my leadership when I was young set me up for what I'm doing today? There are days when I struggle to remember much about my youth, but I guess one reflection I would make is that it was easier to be a young person when I was young. We didn't have social media and all of the different opportunities for being seen and engaging with us 24/7. So, you know, if I was being a teenager and doing something that was a bit goofy, I wouldn't be filmed with an iPhone and potentially have that vision follow me for the rest of my life. That's not to say that you know, it's all about just whether you can hide your foolish moments or not. It's a question of how and when you choose to engage. And I guess one of the most important things that I learned is that being able to have time away, being able to have time to properly reflect on your own views, your own values about what you want is really important. And sometimes you need to do that on your own. So switching off and disconnecting is as important as how well you connect when you do it. What would a young person study and do what I do? Tricky question, that one, because what I studied probably doesn't bear a whole lot of relationship to what I do now. I trained as a lawyer and practiced for a little while, and now I work in the management of a welfare service agency. I guess the message in that is what you choose to do immediately doesn't have to be what you do forever. So if there are things that are interesting to you, that you feel a passion for, or that they fit with your value set, then give them a go. And it's better to have tried something and work out it's not entirely for you than to wonder when you get to my age, what if I'd tried that? So don't feel too locked in, and if you want to try different things, then why not? That's probably enough from me. I just want to wish you all the very best for today, and maybe more importantly, all the very best for coming out of these really weird times that the COVID restrictions represent, and we are all looking forward very much to what your future brings for all of us.
What makes you optimistic?
What makes me optimistic is that I believe that as a society we will get through what's happening at the moment with COVID. I think we'll find a way through, and I think things will work out in the end.
What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up?
Oh, I think the environment, all things around sustainability, around how they choose people to lead them in society. And I think they need to become a lot more aware of these things and to educate themselves so that they can make the right choices for themselves as they get older and older. And that's through education and awareness. Yeah, I think that's what they should be thinking about and focusing on.
How did your leadership when young set you up for what you are doing today?
I think there was a while when I wasn't so leadership focused when I was younger, and then as I got a little bit older, I just became aware of a lot of things, and I just became quite passionate about things that were happening in my school, my university, and my life, and I just learned a lot of stuff. And in doing that, it made me, I suppose, more equipped to take on leadership roles within the businesses that I went into when I was younger, and start my own business then as well. I've had a couple of businesses, so I think my educating myself and raising my own awareness and learning more when I was younger probably set me up for what I'm doing now.
What would a young person have to study and do to do what you do?
I don't know. I think you've got to learn lots of stuff. You have to have a broad education in life to do things more generally. But I would say if you're going to focus on something and hone in on something, make sure it's something that you love and something that matters. And then make it matter for you and for the rest of the world.
Hi, I'm Luke Kerr, Director and Founder of Real Time Learning, and I'm really excited to be attending the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit 2020 on September 15.
What makes you optimistic?
I think people of all ages connect with and are inspired to want to make a difference. That people are willing to volunteer regardless of the personal cost. That purpose counts for more than money. And that COVID-19 might actually make us all collectively address inequality and strive for inclusion. And closer to home, undergraduate engineers volunteering tirelessly for real-time learning to inspire young people with a passion for STEM. We simply couldn't make the difference without their commitment to volunteering to help out in STEM tinkering workshops that we host in industry and school locations.
What are the big issues needing young leaders to step up?
Oh, definitely things like climate change, poverty, education, health. These all fall under social justice. It's so critical. These are complex problems that require all of our attention. This requires young leaders and old that are more focused on equality and people over profits. And many of these challenges have been clearly articulated in the past by the United Nations and agreed as the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These goals represent global challenges that present our communities with significant opportunities to make a difference.
How did your leadership when young set you up for what you are doing today?
Well, I had parents and family that invested in me. They were more interested in me connecting with purpose over a career or a title or a position. I was fortunate to be surrounded by elders that cared about me, that were prepared to invest time in me. I was supported in my activism and was surrounded by a community that believed we can make a difference. I learnt the value of hard work, that talent and natural ability is only a small part of the equation. I believe many of us connect with our passions in our early teens. I know I did, but I didn't know I was going to be an educator. But I was still and passionate about innovation and remain a keen learner.
What would a young person study and do to do what you do?
That's a great question, because I don't believe what I've learnt over the last 7 years directing real-time learning could be studied. Lived experience counts for much more than we often attribute. That said, my formal training as a teacher and my work in education has been a valuable experience. Whatever you study, embrace theory and practice. They go together. We learn best by doing. Find mentors that inspire you and challenge you. Pick courses that align with your passion and purpose. I love to network. This takes patience and practice. You have to be curious and stay curious. Step out of your comfort zone often. Read widely and embrace diversity of thought. Continue to learn and embrace unlearning. Whilst an educator at heart, I've always been interested in innovation and entrepreneurship. Running RTL for me is living the dream. I love learning, making a difference, running my own business. I feel very blessed, and my hope is that young and old people that attend the Nelson Mandela Youth Summit connect with their purpose and passion. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to share my views regarding optimism and leadership as part of the forthcoming Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit. What makes me optimistic? A very good question. I like to promote creative and innovative thinking, to think outside the square, to ask what is needed to find solutions rather than what's wrong. I like to view failure or mistakes as an opportunity to learn and make progress, trial and error life experiments. This has been very much influenced by my background in applied physics before switching to psychology. Great model for leading teams and relationships in general. Also, I believe that good communication and listening creates spontaneity and optimism within teams. It's possible to have fun while pursuing goals within these teams. Makes outcomes great for everybody and the mission. I'm of the view that it helps to have an optimistic view of the future, especially during difficult times, like the one we're enduring right now with COVID. Best not to look at what is happening right now or what's happened in the past, but instead look at the possibility of great things that could happen in the future. Also, I like to use motivating language as much as possible, especially when facing or overcoming adversity. Instill hope within the population, within the people. For example, one of my great mentors, Winston Churchill, I love this speech, "We will fight them on the beaches, we will never surrender." Gee, how much that helped the population during World War II to overcome tyranny. I endeavour to have a success mindset also, to focus on opportunities instead of obstacles. I try to understand what motivates and inspires people to work collaboratively to achieve success. I view negativity and fear respectfully and compassionately, but as inhibitors to success in life. The second question, what are the big issues facing young leaders today? Well, society has become more divided in recent decades as far as I am concerned. Young people need encouragement. Thus, consistent with the ethos of optimism, young leaders need to focus on a vision for an optimistic future for all. Focus on what unites us as humans. I know from my work with post-deployment ADF personnel, Defence Forces, military, how valuable advocate and mentor groups are and how valuable when helping young veterans find their way. These are great models for all young emerging leaders. The third question that I've been asked to consider is, how did my leadership experiences when young help me for my current leadership activities? From about the age of 13 to present time, I have been involved with team sports, and this has been fantastic, a fantastic experience. Lots of mentoring and lots of encouraging conversations and lots of good coaching. This enabled me to work together and lead. Also, working in applied physics prior to shifting to psychology was beneficial in that science projects require absolute teamwork, and most team members are encouraged to perform well throughout experiments, to pursue excellence. Becoming a lecturer was great for my confidence, especially when public speaking. Finally, the final question I've been asked to address today, what would a young person study to do what I do? Well, the most important thing a person can do to be optimistic in life is to pursue work and study that excites their passion. Everyone has an innate actualizing tendency or actualizing optimism. We're born with it. However, it's so easy to be steered in a direction that is not yours, that is not ours. Be prepared to try different experiences to see what is your special resonance, your special optimism. Thank you for your time today.
Hi, it's Sam Birrell, CEO of the Committee for Greater Shepparton. I've been asked to talk about what makes me optimistic and a bit about my leadership journey. I'm optimistic because although we're going through some difficult times with a pandemic and some confusion around the world in terms of leadership and order, we've been through these times before and we have succeeded. In some cases, we've come out better than we have, and the crisis has helped us define who we are as a world. And I look at World War I and the Spanish flu pandemic. We came through those. And World War II, for example, was a terrible crisis last century, but it led to the formation of the United Nations, which has been a positive for human interaction around the world. As far as my own leadership journey, I got involved in community organisations, particularly the Shepparton Arts Festival, and was mentored by many members of the community. I participated in the Fairly Leadership program in 2013, which was a great pivot, a great something that helped me understand the region that I live in better and also understand myself. And then 2 years later, in 2015, I started an MBA at La Trobe University and graduated 3 years later. That was great learnings and helps me to with the skills, learnings, and ability to research that helps me in my job now. So as far as young people, get involved in community organisations, be prepared to start at the bottom, be open to leadership programs and different leadership programs that help you understand the region that you live in, and consistent education, whether it be university or other further education, but continue to challenge yourself, whether it be understanding new pieces of art, new philosophies, new readings. But that really helps you to move to where you need to be in terms of a thinking person that can push all of us forward. So thanks and good luck for your program.
G'day everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in today to this amazing event. Congratulations to Victor and to Rashidi for pulling this together and all the rest of the team. You've got some amazing speakers, so soak it all up. Young people leading with optimism through the pandemic and beyond. If you've turned up to this, you're already leading, you're already interested. Congratulations, well done. The guys have sent me some questions, so what makes me optimistic? To be honest, kids today make me optimistic. They're so much better, so much more engaged than when I was a kid. People tell you it was better in the old days. That is bullshit. You guys are amazing, and the things that kids are doing now under the pressures that they are under is phenomenal. We have young people coming through in our business, and I can't begin to believe the capability and the careful and considered way they go about their decision making. Next question, what are the big issues needed young leaders to step up? That's a big question, and maybe I'd rephrase that and I'd say at an early stage of your leadership, the thing that you need to worry about most is making sure you've got your foundations right. You know, that you've got your moral compass, you understand your right and wrong, you're sure with yourself, and that you're doing things on a small scale that are right. And then the last thing is putting your hand up for something, for anything, where you're trying out your leadership. You don't have to know anything about it. No leader for the first time when they step out knows what they're doing. So it's about putting your hand up for the first time to try. And as you develop your leadership skills and you become more comfortable with who you are in your own skin and what's right and wrong, and you really need to focus on that. If you focus on those things, forget about the self-promotion and all the other leadership stuff. If you've got that moral compass stuff right, as life goes on, people will seek you out because they know you're solid on that and they will want to hear from you about that. What would a young person study today if they wanted to do what I do? Look, my advice about what you should study is find the thing that you are interested in and follow that with passion. Somebody that has chosen a difficult to get into a narrow field, but is the best at it, will have a highly successful and productive life. If you choose the thing that maybe is popular or you think that is the way of the future because that's where the jobs are, but you're not interested in it, it's a waste of your time and capability and capacity. You've got this great opportunity now. Pick the thing you're passionate about, you're interested in, and be the best at that. That will allow you to be the most persuasive. And you can influence a whole range of worldwide things from almost any position. I run the most boring business maybe anywhere. We wash sheets and towels for hospitals and laundries and things like that. I mean, it is the most unsexy business in the world. Having said that, it's given me the chance. We employ 320 people. We've been able to be really involved in multiculturalism. We've been able to be involved in Indigenous affairs. I'm involved in community leadership. So really, I have just followed something I'm interested in, which is running businesses, and that has given me the opportunity. So that would be my advice to you. So listen up today, guys. Enjoy all the great speakers. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. If you ever want to chat about anything more or talk more about what I've done today, get in touch with me and I'm happy to chat.
Hi, I'm Wendy Lovell, the member for Northern Victoria Region, and I'd like to congratulate all of you on participating in the 3rd Nelson Mandela Leadership Summit. Leadership qualities are not something that we're naturally born with, but they are something that can be fostered in people. I was lucky to have the example of really great parents who taught me that if I wanted to live in a good community, I had to contribute to making that place a good community. My parents were leaders in business and community service, and I followed them into business and community service. I was that person on every fundraising committee, the person who advocated to politicians for better services and infrastructure in our town. From there, I progressed to a career in politics, to being the politician who actually made things happen. I've been fortunate to have a really great career and to have the honour of being a minister in government, a position that gives you the opportunity to really make a difference to people's lives. One of the things that I implemented as Housing Minister was a policy to have youth foyers in Victoria. We have one of those here in Greater Shepparton. These are facilities that actually change young people's lives. They give young people who are homeless, who are couch surfing, who are disengaged with education, the opportunity to have stable housing, to re-engage with their education and to build a better life for themselves. And I'm really proud of the achievements of our youth foyers, particularly the one here in Greater Shepparton that has given so many of our young people the opportunity to build a better life for themselves. But we don't only need leaders in politics, we need leaders at all levels of our community. In our sporting groups, our community service, our cultural groups, there are many opportunities to be leaders in Greater Shepparton. And as we come out of this global pandemic caused by COVID-19, there will be lots of opportunities to help our economy recover in Greater Shepparton as well. So we will need many leaders. I'm hoping that from you participating in today's Nelson Mandela Summit, that you will learn some of the skills that will enable you to be one of those leaders that not only helps us to recover from the pandemic, but who also goes on to make Greater Shepparton an even greater place to live. Thank you very much and good luck with the summit.
So I guess the question is, what makes a good leader? Well, in my opinion, the first thing is respect. I think you've got to give respect to the people with whom you're dealing, and in turn, that respect will come back to you. If you've got respect and you include people around you, you're then entitled to ask the questions, sometimes the hard questions, that have got to be asked. And it is in that vein that you will do bigger things for the community. But respect, being involved, seeking other people's advice, seeking other people's opinions. It's very good to take a team approach when you're looking at community and in fact worldwide things such as the climate emergency and the environment problems that we've got at the moment. So I wish you well in the summit. I hope it goes well and stay safe.
Madiba was a moral giant of the 20th century, whose timeless legacy continues to guide us today. the theme of Nelson Mandela's International Day is Take Action, Inspire Change. It highlights the importance of working together, from governments to citizens, to build a peaceful, sustainable and equitable world. We mark this day at a time when the threat of the COVID-19 pandemic endangers everyone, everywhere, and especially the most vulnerable. In the face of these challenges, world leaders need to recognize the vital importance of unity and solidarity. COVID-19 is exposing deep inequalities. We need to fight this pandemic of inequality through a new social contract for a new era. Only together can we fend off the common threat of COVID and recover better. As United Nations marks its 75th anniversary in this fragile time, we reflect on the life and work of Nelson Mandela, who embodied the highest values of the United Nations and took action and inspired change. Despite many years as a prisoner of conscience, Madiba retained his dignity and commitment to his ideals. Let his example propel any government that keeps such prisoners to release them. There should be no prisoners of conscience in the 21st century. Nelson Mandela reminds us that as long as poverty, injustice and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. On this Mandela Day, let us recall that we can and must be part of the quest for a better future of dignity, opportunity and prosperity for all people on a healthy planet.